Hi guys, you should be watching this on Thursday, March 26th. I hope you're having a great day and enjoying your time off. It's been a while since I've seen you now, almost 2 weeks, and hopefully life is doing okay for you. I do miss you guys very much. Today what we're going to talk about is commentary or elaboration. This is the E part of races. When we look at races, I want to kind of talk about a couple different things with you guys, and I apologize. I thought I had my screen up and ready to go, but I don't. So this is going to come in a couple different videos in order for me to get through it all. Elaboration is probably one of the hardest things for you guys. When we look at races, this is the E part, okay? The E stands for explain. Now, what are we explaining? Now, always students tell me, well, I'm explaining my answer. What answer? Is it your answer to the question? Okay. What about that are you explaining? To be honest, guys, you are explaining your evidence. Okay. So that piece of that sentence you took from the text or the document or the source that you were using, that is what you're explaining. You're explaining what it means, how it connects to your answer. So for example, if I said, what is the best way to study for math class? Okay, oops, sorry. My answer, the R and the A, right, would be the best way to study for math class is, that's the R. Now I'm going to give my answer, the best way to study for math class is review notes, period. Now I have the R and the A done. My C is according to the article, Math Concepts, it states, and I'm going to directly quote this, students that review notes daily increase understanding. Okay, understanding 83%. Okay. Now, all right, cool, great. So, ladies and gentlemen, the next part would be my E. That's where I'm at. And now a lot of kids are like, okay, Miss Robinson, that's great, but I don't know what that means. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what I'm talking about. And my answer would be, we're going to explain this part, this evidence part. What does that mean? What is it showing? Why is it important? And so rather than, saying, okay, this is how you do it, let me give you an analogy, something that I think you guys can relate to, something that you'll really get, okay? And maybe you won't. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. Sorry, I'm looking through and making sure I have all my stuff ready to go. But I think you're going to understand it, and I think it's going to make a lot more sense to you. Now, before I do that, you want to make sure that you're using transitions, and I'll talk about that in my PowerPoint that I'm creating. This analogy is something that will bring home what the explanation point is. Many of you have really, 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 really struggled with that. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my PowerPoint. Layering commentary. Commentary is a word that I use for explanation because you're commenting on the evidence. You're commenting like we comment on a picture on Instagram. We comment on people's posts on Facebook. Those are comments. You're doing the exact same thing when you're writing. You're commenting on your evidence and what it means. And you're layering commentary, or you're writing commentary almost like you layer nachos. Okay, so I want you to think about nachos and what makes nachos so good. Now, you may not like nachos. Okay, think of something else. Think of an ice cream sundae. I don't care what it is. This is just what I picked to use as my analogy. But I want you to think about explaining your evidence like this. Okay, so when we start off, kind of think about how to properly construct nachos. Ogres have layers. And so do nachos, and so does elaboration. That explanation has to have layers to it. You can't just put one sentence and call it good. Okay, so At the end of this, we are going to look at an example of a well-written essay. And this essay has everything it needs to have except for the commentary. And together, we're going to add interesting layered commentary, and lots of it, to the essay in order to finish it off and make it a beautiful piece. For this activity, we're going to practice writing as much commentary as possible. That means more than the 2 sentences or more than the 1 sentence that many of you are giving me. And I'm going to walk you through how to do that. Okay, so I'm going to show you what good commentary looks like, and then we will do the essay together. And then your activity for today, your assignment for today, is you going back through and looking at how students in the past have done some commentary, and you're going to be critiquing and telling them how they can improve it and make it better, which means you're going to have the mindset of a teacher. You know, do you actually know what commentary is and how to actually write it? So I suggest you pay attention. I suggest you take notes on what I'm talking about. If I go too fast, you can pause the video, you can rewind it, you can rewatch it, you can do whatever you need to do. But I want you to really, truly understand elaboration, this commentary, this explanation, this E part of races. Again, races is just a strategy that is good writing. I don't have to use the word races to know that I have to do this. Okay, so when you're in 8th grade at a different school and they're like, hey, today we're going to write, you know you're going to use races because that's what good writing is. So let's talk about nachos. Okay, let's start off with what nachos always begin. Chips. The chips in your essay or your short response or your races prompt is the evidence. Okay, obviously chips are essential or important to the composition of correct nachos. You can't have nachos without chips. You cannot have a good, well-written races response without evidence. Okay, so without chips, would nachos even be nachos? No. Without evidence from a text, you would not have a well-written prompt. Now, the danger with adding commentary that just says the same thing as your evidence does, using the exact same words, taking what your evidence says and just repeating it, is that now your nachos are just made up of chips. They just have evidence. And well, you know, more chips, commentary that says the exact same thing as the evidence, you haven't added anything new. It's just chips topped with chips. Not really, I mean, maybe depending on the day, sometimes chips are just good, but I don't want chips today, I want nachos. And without adding other stuff, if you just leave your evidence and you stop, or you just repeat your evidence, which many of you do, you're not giving your reader anything delicious or exciting to read. And so we want to add more to it, you know? So let's talk about cheese. The most important ingredient in your commentary nachos is probably the cheese. This is the first sentence of commentary that explains the evidence. So we have our evidence, we've got our chips down on a plate, we've got our evidence written in our essay, and now we're going to sprinkle some cheese on top. We're going to choose one of the sentence starters that I have on my next slide to start our cheese sentence. And we're going to summarize what the evidence just said, trying to use different words than the words that we just quoted, that we just copied from our text. Don't be repetitive, because then that's just chips upon chips. Be zesty, like sharp cheddar. Add new words. So if I went back here for just a second and I said, students that review notes daily increase understanding 83%, and I take one of my sentence frames, okay, so here's the cheese sentence starters. This shows, or this evidence stated, or this quote means, or to further explain, or in other words, or whatever, right? If I did that here, I would say something like this. This evidence shows. Now I'm going to summarize what that evidence shows. And I'm going to say it in different words. It shows that 83 out of 100 students did better in math class by looking over their notes every day. I just took Oops. And because I put the word that, I don't need the comma. Okay. This is saying basically the same thing. I'm reviewing that, but I made it a little bit more interesting by changing the words. I didn't just repeat and put more chips on top of more chips. Okay. I sprinkled a little bit of cheese. I got my readers actually thinking about what that actually means now. Okay. Now, these would be great to have in your notes. So if you pause the video right now and write some of these down, this would be a great transition into your commentary. Okay. So I talk about transitions a lot in class. Doing that would be helpful. Now, I could stop there, ladies and gentlemen, and I would have some nachos, right? I have chips, I have cheese. That is what nachos are. And I could stop there. Would it be interesting? Would it be exciting to a reader to read? Would it teach them anything? Would it give them information on the topic and really convince them that the best way to do well in math class is to review your notes? Probably not. Okay, so we want to add a little bit more to our nachos. Some people like to add meat. So after you've restated the evidence, it's time to add your own ideas to the mix. Now everyone's going to add different things to their nachos.
FYI for anyone in the building.
Okay, I apologize. I came on to make an announcement and didn't want to interrupt our video. Okay, so everyone's going to add different things to their nachos. You know, maybe some people don't like meat, but they add sour cream, or they add, jalapenos, or they add salsa. They're going to add different things. But this is your time to make it your own, to add your own ideas, your own thoughts that are happening in your brain about your evidence there. Nachos are not a meal unless there's other things involved. You know, you've always heard your mom say, that's not a meal, there's no fruits or vegetables added. My mom always said that's not a meal because there's no meat. So a salad was not a meal. Soup was not a meal unless there was meat in the soup. Okay, so there's no need to restate the evidence again. We've already done that. Chips and cheese don't just make a meal. Now, I know some of you are like, yes, they do. It's not a nutritious meal. Remember that writing is my way of looking into your brain to see your thinking. So what's important about the quote you chose? Why does it matter to the reader, or humans in general, about it? What do you know about this actual topic? And how can you explain its importance to our society? So we can do stuff like this by adding some more things. Like, this is important because, or based on this information, or therefore, or having this knowledge causes this, or most people who believe this know this, or, this basically means this, or what people don't know is blah, blah, blah. So I could go back here and I could say, let me choose one of these things. Based on this information, students would benefit from studying their notes at home. When they review the notes, their brain is keeping the ideas fresh, and they are able to remember what they learned. It helps process the steps and allows for practice to always continue. Okay? Now, ladies and gentlemen, I just took the moment to explain why it's important that students study their notes, why it matters to them. Okay, why does it matter? I could continue by saying, this matters because math is a skill needed for daily life. Most careers use math. Okay, now I'm explaining to them this is why it's important. This is why you need to do it. Now I could stop there and I have a full meal and everything's great, right? I've got some chips, I've got some cheese, I've got some meat. All right, my mom would be pretty happy. And my readers would probably be happy.